interview with John Nulty about the Black Lives Matter movement and things surrounding that. The first question I have is if there is, from what you've seen, obviously there's been a lot of controversy over the last 3 years or so, mostly, but really throughout the entire United States history. Do you believe there's a police brutality problem, not just dependent on race, just in general in the United States?
Yeah, there's an issue with police misconduct, undoubtedly, and some of it is certainly racially based. And I also think that it's a socioeconomic issue as well.
All right. When you say socioeconomic, what exactly do you mean? You mean like dependent on like low class areas? You think that
Well,
people
I mean
are
that people
marginalized?
who have less money and less influence are treated differently than people with money and influence. Yes.
What do you think is a possible solution to a problem like that?
Well, I think there's a number of solutions. I think an important solution, just in a mechanical sense, is the use of body cameras by police, both for the protection of police and for the protection of people who interact with police, because it helps to demonstrate what's going on in those interactions. And as we've seen in cases where there have been films of it, it's often much different than what the police say, but we've also seen cases where it's different from what the people who interacted with the police say happened. So I think it helps both sides, and I think it leads to better police procedures and more trust among police and society.
Following up with that, what you talked about low, like with race and socioeconomic class, as a middle class white man, have you felt that you ever been like not prejudiced, obviously not like prejudiced against, but like have you ever thought that you've been kind of like given slack by police officers in a certain case, or just like in perspective?
I don't have any particular personal story with that, but I have, no doubt that my interaction with the police, my expectation of an interaction with police would be different than someone who might be either a person of color or a person with a different socioeconomic status might anticipate their interaction with police would be. I don't have a nervousness when I'm dealing with police because I wear a suit, I'm white, and I think I'm treated differently because of that, or would be.
All right, turning the page a little bit, we've heard a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement in the last year especially, but it has a lot of controversies around it too. Some people think that it's a little too radical in some cases. For people who don't outright support the Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that makes them racist or prejudiced?
It doesn't necessarily make you racist or prejudiced. I think there's a certain level of misunderstanding in terms of what the causes of that are and what the aims of that movement are. Of course, it's hard to say that everyone involved in that movement is saying the same thing or seeking to achieve the same thing, but I think if there was a greater understanding that the ultimate desire is just to have a equality of treatment in all segments of society, I think there would be more accepted by a wider variety of people.
All right, touching upon that again, now, like you said, it wasn't exactly racist if you don't support it, but a lot of people in protest to Black Lives Matter movement have said that either white lives matter or all lives matter. Do you think this has a racist or prejudice undertone?
It does, I believe. I think again, I think it's more of a lack of education or maybe a purposeful lack of understanding, because I think the Black Lives Movement, exactly what they're saying is all lives matter, but they're saying black lives aren't necessarily, have not always been a subset of that feeling in our society. Black lives have undoubtedly mattered less in the everyday life of our nation for a long time, whether it's been slavery or Jim Crow, or more subtle forms of racism that still exist today. So I think all the Black Lives Matter movement is saying, treat us like everyone else, i.e. all lives matter. So people who seek to turn that around, I think, are really just misunderstanding what the movement's saying in the first place.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.